I gave 17 years to that company, designed their entire server architecture, wrote the protocols, fixed the breaches they didn't even know they had. Then one Monday morning, I was out, escorted by security because the CEO's niece wanted to explore cybersecurity. She was 23, fresh off Instagram, and didn't know the difference between RAM and storage. But she smiled well on camera. They handed her my desk, my projects, even my parking spot. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I just left. And what I did next, that's what you're here for. If this hits home, subscribe and tell me your story below. They didn't even look me in the eye when they took everything I built and handed it to someone who once asked if malware was the same as a fashion brand. That's not an exaggeration. That's how it started. Here's the twist. I wasn't just fired. I was erased like a corrupted file, too dangerous to keep. Not because I failed, but because I was too damn good to control. They couldn't kill what I built, so they tried to replace it with a pretty smile and a last name. The meeting was sudden, a calendar invite titled Team Restructure Review. I showed up early, as always. The conference room was already staged. HR rep present, legal guy hovering in the background. No coffee, no chit chat, no slides, just a printed severance packet with my name spelled wrong. We're moving in a new direction, said the CEO without blinking. I knew what that meant. I had seen it happen to others. Just never thought I'd be next. But the twist, I was being replaced by someone who had never written a single line of code. The CEO's niece, 23, a digital marketing grad who had built a personal brand posting outfit of the day reels. Her qualifications? She brings a new energy, I was told. Apparently, technical depth and institutional memory now counted less than being able to wear headphones in a TikTok dance. She shadowed me for 3 days, 3 awkward, painful days. She called our zero trust framework kind of paranoid, asked if Linux was a password, and forgot to badge in twice, triggering a system lockdown. I still walked her through it, explained the architecture, even printed out notes, because that's who I was, reliable, professional, and too damn polite. On my last day, she smiled at me with perfect white teeth and said, "It's crazy how much you've done here. I hope I can be like half as good." I said nothing, because it wouldn't have mattered. They didn't hire her to be good. They hired her to be seen. The security guard walked me out with a tight smile. I had one cardboard box, a photo of my team back when we were still building something real, and the pen I signed my first contract with. The parking lot felt colder than usual. I didn't cry. I didn't slam the door. I sat in my car for 12 minutes, listening to nothing. Then I drove. Not home. Somewhere else. I'd spent nearly 2 decades protecting that company's data, defending them from ransomware attacks, reworking server protocols at 3 a.m. I'd caught breaches before they made headlines. I once isolated a live exploit during a shareholder call and patched it mid-sentence. But none of that mattered. Not when someone younger, prettier, and related showed interest in learning the ropes. They thought I'd go quietly, that I'd fade out into early retirement or disappear into a forgotten folder marked legacy staff. They didn't know me, not really, because if they had, they would have realized one thing: I don't lose. I redirect. And when I do, I don't circle back. I make a whole new map. I didn't burn their building down. I didn't scream into the void. I simply got in my car, took the next exit, and made a silent vow true. I didn't go back. I went in a different direction. They didn't just replace me. They gave her access to the very architecture I built, the one I warned could crumble if handled wrong. And she smiled, oblivious, posing for her first day selfie beside the firewall terminal, while every line of code behind her silently begged for competence she didn't have. She was the kind of hire you make when perception matters more than performance. Someone who looked good on camera, sounded rehearsed on panels, and checked the right generational box. Gen Z, a digital native, fresh from some overpriced MBA crash course that prioritized branding over infrastructure. But they gave her everything, not just my title, not just my projects, my root access. I had designed the foundational security engine that handled 70% of the company's encrypted cloud transfers. I knew the bottlenecks, the fault tolerances, the one legacy port we hadn't touched because we knew the risk when I left. I assumed they'd mothball the system and start over. But no, she walked right in. No audit, no phase out, just a Slack announcement, one badge deactivated, another printed. I sat alone that night in my car outside the building, watching her reflection on the glass walls as she moved through the floor like a tourist in a museum of systems she couldn't understand. But I didn't hate her. Hate is too heavy. She wasn't the architect of this betrayal. She was just the most photogenic brick in a crumbling wall. The real insult wasn't her smile. It was the silence. No exit interview, no handshake. Just a system admin quietly deleting my login credentials while she took pictures of the server room. That's when I knew they didn't want revenge. I wanted purpose, and I found it where they least expected. Across the river in a company they used to laugh at, smaller, hungrier, but run by people who didn't hire smiles, they hired solutions. They listened. I showed them what I'd built. Then I showed them how to build something better, something faster, something smarter, something that would make the market forget my old employer even existed. And I did it without raising my voice, without breaking a single law. They gave her the keys to my engine, but I still had the blueprint and I was just getting started. I didn't walk into Cylance with a resume. I walked in with a scar, and they didn't ask for references or accolades. They asked where it hurt the most and then gave me a team to fix it. That was the moment I realized intelligence isn't loud, it listens. And then it builds. Cylance wasn't some flashy startup with exposed brick walls and kombucha on tap. It was a clean operation. Lean, precise, almost invisible, no PR stunts, no empty buzzwords, just a CTO named Karen Tan who had spent 15 years in silent war rooms building quiet tools for noisy markets. The kind of leader who didn't interrupt, she recalibrated. When I explained what I used to manage, she didn't nod politely or scan for keywords. She sketched the architecture in her notebook as I spoke, correcting inefficiencies on the fly. I didn't need a title here. I needed a challenge, and I got one. They had a skeleton system, barely functioning, duct tape disguised as a platform, but the potential was there, untouched territory, a willingness to learn, and zero ego. I rebuilt their core engine using modular nodes, adaptive threat modeling, and an alert logic that could diagnose failure 5 minutes before it even occurred. No one outside that room knew I had joined them. Not yet. I stayed low, quiet, anonymous, but every week, the new system silently captured market edge from my former employer. Faster response times, cleaner latency, smarter client protections. They hadn't even noticed we were winning. That's how it should be. You don't announce your power shift. You let them feel it. We weren't bigger, we were better because we paid attention to what mattered. Cylance didn't try to compete with flash. We built quietly with precision and struck. Like a whisper no one heard until it was already inside their system. Every line of code I wrote was a reminder. They chose vanity. I chose function. They chased clout. I chased clarity. And in the end, clarity always wins. They took my job, my tools, my access, but they could never take my foresight. Because while they were busy showcasing their new cyber influencer to shareholders, I was writing the kind of system you can't steal, one that thinks for itself, heals itself, and hides its brilliance in plain sight. At Cylance, we didn't just build a product, we built an ecosystem. I took the skeleton they handed me and restructured every element, embedding predictive analytics directly into the core, layering in a self-correcting neural mesh that learned from every attempted breach. The system didn't just react, it anticipated. It didn't just detect, it adapted. But here's what made it untouchable. It didn't need me to function. I designed it so no one could walk in and hijack it. Not even me. Each layer was modular, segmented, encrypted with a rotating key that responded to performance metrics, not people. In other words, the moment someone tried to take credit for it without understanding it, it would simply stop optimizing. It wasn't built for pride, it was built for purpose. And that purpose wasn't revenge, not yet. Solance began rolling it out to select clients quietly, deliberately. High-risk industries first, healthcare, financial services, national logistics. We didn't go after quantity, we targeted quality. Contracts the old firm never noticed because they were too busy chasing celebrity tech deals and talking about vision in keynote speeches. Our first win was a mid-size hospital network. Their data security had been patched with vendor Frankenstein tools, bloated, clunky, impossible to scale. We streamlined it in 6 days, no downtime, zero data loss. They signed a 5-year deal without blinking. Then came a logistics firm whose fleet tracking system had been hit with malware 3 times in a month. We cleaned them in under 48 hours and rewrote their vulnerability model so it could no longer be exploited the same way twice. Word began to spread, but not loudly, just enough for the right ears to perk up. And then it happened. A bidding war, one that would have gone unnoticed, except the client in question was massive. National Telecom, a name that sat on every boardroom's dream list. And both companies, Solance and my former employer, made it to the final pitch. I didn't show up in person. I didn't need to. Solance system spoke for itself. It performed a live simulation under attack and rebuilt its own threat walls in real time while projecting the attacker's next move. The demo stunned the room, but what ended them, was a single slide I designed months earlier. It didn't show charts or code, just a sentence. Real security doesn't ask for credit. It earns trust by never failing. That sentence wasn't directed at the client. It was for them, the people who replaced me. And they knew it. They sat in that room, jaws tight, because they recognized the architecture. They recognized the fingerprint in the logic trees. They recognized me, but it was too late. What I had built, they couldn't replicate. Because I built it from experience, they dismissed, from loyalty, they discarded, and from quiet rage, they thought I'd swallow. I didn't. I transformed it into a system so resilient, so fluid, so damn good, it couldn't be stolen, only earned. They walked into that boardroom with polished shoes, designer suits, and a PowerPoint built on my blueprints, never realizing the stage they stepped on had already been rewired to expose every weakness they never bothered to fix. This wasn't a pitch, it was an execution. Quiet, clinical, and absolutely final. The contract on the table was worth $970 million. 0 cents over 7 years. Telecom infrastructure, cybersecurity integration, national expansion, and guaranteed support SLAs that would push either company into a new tier of dominance. Both sides had prepared. My old company, bloated with reputation, came armed with branding flair and vague promises about innovation. Solance brought results. At Solance, we didn't spend time talking about what we could do. We demonstrated what we'd already done. Our presentation didn't start with a mission statement. It started with a breach simulation. We triggered a multi-vector cyber attack, custom built to mimic real-world threats. Then we let our system respond. The room watched as the AI-driven shield adapted in milliseconds, isolated the intrusions, rerouted sensitive traffic, neutralized malware, and wrote new protocols without human intervention. Our team didn't flinch. They'd seen it before. But the client hadn't, and neither had the execs from my old firm. Their faces said everything. They tried to pivot, said their platform was more human-centered, which was code for manual overrides and slow approvals. They referenced awards and press coverage. One even mentioned the CEO's niece being recently profiled in a business magazine as the new face of cybersecurity. That didn't help. It made them look unserious. The client's board asked one question: can your system match that kind of real-time response? The silence that followed wasn't hesitation, it was defeat. because the answer was no, and they knew it. That's when they looked at me, really looked at me. Hadn't spoken a word, hadn't even been introduced. I was just a senior architect on the roster. But when the CTO of the client asked who had designed the system, my team turned to me. I stood, nodded once, and said, "It's not designed to impress, it's designed to survive." That was it. The pitch was over. Cylance won the contract by unanimous vote. My old company didn't just lose money, they lost credibility, momentum, and most painfully, the illusion that they were still the best in the game. That illusion shattered the moment they saw what I'd built and realized it had come from the same mind they'd discarded without a second thought. They didn't lose to Cylance. They lost to the person they replaced with a smile and a PR stunt. The first email was disguised as a check-in, thinly veiled desperation dressed up in corporate language. The second came at 2:11 a.m. and simply said, "We need to talk." By the fourth, they weren't offering meetings, they were offering titles, money, forgiveness, but you can't bribe someone out of dignity. After the contract announcement made headlines, I didn't post. I didn't gloat. I let the silence grow loud enough for them to hear their own regret. Their VP of operations reached out first, attached a PDF of a proposed executive advisor role, 7 figures, remote flexibility, full autonomy. The subject line was a second chapter. I didn't reply. Then came the former CTO, who once took credit for my entire server stabilization framework. His email was shorter. "You were always the best. Let's rebuild." It ended with his personal number and a PS that read, "She's leaving in the fall." I assume he meant the CEO's niece. I still didn't reply. Eventually, the CEO herself emailed me. No assistant, no branding fluff, just raw pleading language. She said she'd made a mistake, that she'd miscalculated the importance of legacy knowledge, and that the door was open if I wanted it. I didn't want it. There's something sacred in walking away with your spine straight and your inbox full of the apologies you were never given to your face. I never wrote back, but I did update my LinkedIn, removed my job history from their company, switched my current title to Principal Systems Architect Cylance, and changed my visibility settings to private. That silence spoke louder than any rejection letter. It said, "You had me, you lost me. And now you don't even deserve access to what I've become." Watching them scramble to repair the damage wasn't satisfying because they were suffering. It was satisfying because they finally saw the value of what they threw away. Their empire was never built on titles or PR features. It was built on the backs of people like me. And when they chose image over substance, they forgot that real power isn't loud, it's invisible until it's undeniable. The last time I saw their office building, it looked exactly the same. Clean windows, buzzcard doors, the same lobby plant I once watered after hours while finishing code no one else understood. But something had shifted. The shine was still there, but the soul was gone. And I didn't miss it. I didn't walk past out of nostalgia. I was headed to a conference across the street where I was keynoting. Funny how things change. A few years ago, I couldn't get approved for a $5,000 0-cent server upgrade without a 6-person meeting. Now, I was consulting Fortune 50 companies on resilience frameworks worth 10 times that every month. People say revenge is sweet, but this didn't feel like revenge. It felt like gravity doing its job. They were the ones who chose flash over function. They demoted experience in favor of aesthetic. And when the crash came, it wasn't because I sabotaged them. It was because they hollowed themselves out the moment they made decisions based on nepotism, not competence. I never once looked back wishing I'd stayed or that they'd kept me. The truth is, I outgrew them long before they cut me loose. They just gave me an excuse to stop watering dead roots. Cylance, the so-called scrappy underdog, had become the new benchmark. We didn't outspend them, we outbuilt them, because while they were obsessed with looking modern, we quietly became the future. And every time someone asked me in private, do you ever regret not going back? I'd smile and say, they don't build gates strong enough to keep me where I don't belong. That's what they never understood. I didn't burn the bridge. I just never needed to cross it again. Their downfall wasn't a bomb I planted. It was the mirror they refused to look into. And when the reflection finally became too loud to ignore, it wasn't me staring back at them. It was the absence of the person they once underestimated. So no, I never brought them down. I just left them there, right where they decided I didn't belong. She stole my job with a smile and a last name, but what she couldn't steal was what I'd already built in silence: value, vision, and the quiet kind of power that doesn't beg to be noticed until it's too late. The truth is, most betrayals don't come with explosions. They come in meetings that suddenly don't include you, in decision chains that reroute, in smiles that look polite but cut like glass. If you've ever been pushed aside for someone with less experience, fewer qualifications, or a louder last name, this story probably echoed something in your chest. The real pain isn't just losing a job, it's being made invisible. But what you do next, that's where the power lives. Revenge, when it's calculated, not chaotic, isn't about destruction. It's about evolution. It's about walking away from a system that chose appearance over substance and joining something that values the soil, not just the fruit. And when your roots grow somewhere else, stronger, deeper, the ones who replaced you will one day see the garden they neglected has stopped blooming. This story reminds us that you don't have to scream to make a statement. You don't need to burn a building down to show them they made a mistake. You just need to succeed where they can see it and where they can no longer reach you. Sometimes silence is the sharpest knife. In today's world, especially in America's competitive, sometimes superficial workplaces, this is more relevant than ever. Titles can be gifted, but respect is earned. If they can't see your worth, maybe it's because their eyes are trained to spot things that shine, not things that endure. So stop trying to prove yourself to people who profit off your invisibility. Instead, redirect your value to places that water your growth. Sometimes forgiveness is self-liberation, but sometimes letting them watch your quiet rise is the most poetic form of justice. How to get started today. Audit your value. Write down 5 things you do better than most people at your job. Reconnect with purpose. What kind of problems do you actually love solving? Research a competitor. Find one company that's doing what your current job refuses to consider. Oh, your LinkedIn quietly, strategically, without warning shots. Invest in one skill this week, something your old boss overlooked, but the market pays big for. Have you ever been replaced by someone who didn't earn it? Comment below. Share this with someone who needs the reminder, and subscribe for more stories that cut deeper than the headlines.